question, or more like a comment. I follow two psychologists, Dr. Ramani and Dr. Les Carter, who are keen experts in dealing with narcissists, fallen beings in parentheses, and both have the same advice as you, that it is pointless to try to win arguments with those who constantly distort reality to try to manipulate us. Their sole purpose is to get supply as energy vampires by feeding from our provoked negative emotions. It is impossible to argue with these people, for they have no interest in truth or in ever admitting to mistakes. My family is plagued with difficult people, so it took me a long while learning these realities the hard way. Began to lose attachment to arguing with narcissists after I saw the futility of it, which occurred only after a deep introspection over time on this matter. When the pointlessness of dealing with dark beings is finally seen, then we naturally learn to disengage with ease. Excuse me. The point being that it takes effort on our part to internalize this wisdom. There's also a need for patience while we are working on it, as sometimes the lessons we need to imprint deep into our psyche might take a long time to assimilate. And yeah, I can only agree with that. It's certainly been my own experience as well that, we have, as I said, we have all have created a divine plan before we came into this embodiment. And part of that divine plan is the lesson we want to learn, the resolution of psychology that we want to have before we are ready to give our gift. And so many of us have, from past lives, we created these subconscious selves in dealing with very difficult people, whether we call them narcissists or fallen beings or whatever. But there are, of course, many difficult people on the planet. And so we oftentimes put ourselves in family situations, like the question that describes, where we have very difficult people around us. And the reason we do this is that it brings up these patterns from the past so we can see them. We can maybe outplay them in such an extreme way that we finally see it, and we begin to question ourselves, as the question very well describes, how we, after some introspection, we come to see the futility of it, and we just let it go. We let the selves die. And so that's, I think, a very common scenario for spiritual people. This is actually what I explain in my Avatar Psychology playlist, where I talk about how we have these interactions with these fallen beings, relationships with fallen beings. And I also talk about why we came to Earth in the first place, and how we often came with certain subconscious selves that cause us to engage with these people and think we can prove something, or we have to prove something to them. So it's very true that it can take time, and it can take a lot of introspection. I can look back at my life and see that there were certain patterns I was working on for decades. I wasn't very conscious of them in the beginning, but I can see that I was working on them because I had the questions in my mind, and I especially can see, even back to childhood, how I was always fascinated, you might say, with people that were close-minded. You couldn't change their mind. And I had some in my own family, but I also saw it in school. I saw it especially when I went to university and met these born-again Marxists, that it was impossible to come up with an argument or reasoning. In fact, beyond that, you couldn't even have a conversation with these people. That's what I started noticing at a certain time, that there were people that were so close-minded that you couldn't have a normal conversation with them. You couldn't have where you're just relaxed, exchanging ideas and viewpoints, and you have a right to say what you say, even if it disagrees with them. They don't attack you for it. But you couldn't with certain people, because they always feel defensive. They are always feeling attacked if you don't agree with them, and they're always aggressively trying to convince you or manipulate you or shame you, and if they can't make you agree with them, they want you to at least feel bad about yourself and question your right to even exist. Their basic goal seems to be to get you to dig a hole for yourself and climb into it. Yes, there are definitely these people, and as the questioner says, one of their motivations is they want to steal your energy by engaging you in these fruitless arguments. But beyond that, in some cases, they actually want to destroy you. They want to destroy your spiritual potential, your what I call your personal Christ potential, to be an open door for speaking a higher awareness on earth. And I would say, though, that it says here that there's also a need for patience while we are working on it, as sometimes the lessons we need to imprint deep into our psyche might take a long time to assimilate. And it's true enough that we are meant to learn lessons. But if you look at what I've said in many of my videos, I have a different model of the psyche than is standard out there. So that's why I wouldn't say that we need to imprint these lessons deep within our psyche. And here's why. I've explained. We have the outer personality, what many people call the soul. And it's made up of 4 levels of the mind. There's the mind that's strictly dealing with the body, there's the emotional mind, the mental mind, and the identity mind. And this is what psychologists normally call the psyche. But this is the outer psyche. This is not who we really are, because as I've said, who we really are is the core of our lower being is what I call the conscious you. But the conscious you is an extension of our spiritual self, I am presence. So in other words, the I am presence sends the conscious you as an extension of itself into embodiment on a planet like Earth. In order to come into embodiment, we start creating these 4 levels of the mind: identity, mental, emotional, physical. And we start, as we come into embodiment, as we interact with the world and with other people, we create all of these what I call subconscious selves. This becomes what most people call the psyche. But this is not who we really are. We are still the conscious you. And the important thing about the conscious you concept is it is pure or neutral awareness. It isn't a personality. It doesn't even have a sense of worldly identity. It has the sense of identity as an extension of the I am presence, as a spiritual being, but not as a particular, whether it's a Dane or an American or a Russian or Catholic or Protestant or Hindu or Muslim. None of this, man or woman, all of these identities it doesn't have. And that means that the lesson that the conscious you needs to learn from interacting with, for example, fallen beings, is to let go of these subconscious selves that wants to pull you into reacting. In other words, the lesson for the conscious you on the spiritual path is to return to the state of neutrality, of pure awareness that it descended with. Like Jesus said 2,000 years ago, only the being who descended from heaven can ascend back to heaven. As long as you have all the outer baggage, all the outer personality, and you identified with it, you can't ascend, because the conscious you isn't back to neutral or pure awareness. This doesn't mean, of course, that there aren't lessons we learn, for example, our interacting with fallen beings. But those lessons are not integrated in the psyche. They are integrated in the I am presence and what's called our causal body. Our causal body is what holds all of the lessons we have learned, not only in this lifetime, not only on Earth, but if we came from a natural planet, for example. So that's why, the way I would say it is that we do need to be patient with ourselves, because we need to come to the point where we really see, after introspection, we see the pointlessness, and then we can let these selves die that are causing us to react. And when we have no reaction, then we are free of the fallen beings. That's like Jesus said, Prince of this world cometh and has nothing in me. That's what the Buddha called non-attachment. He faced the demons of Mara, but didn't have any attachments they could use to pull on him. So this is the task of the conscious you. Now the integration, lessons we need to imprint deep into our psyche, that is in the I am presence and the causal body. So that's where they are stored, and that's why they're, once they're integrated there, they are permanent. We learn them. Even if you learned this in this embodiment and you had another lifetime, you would come in with a higher intuitive awareness and without these subconscious selves. So you could basically be around fallen beings without reacting to them.